God-conscious preachers are preaching and inspiring others to be sincere devotees of God, sincere and purely sacrifice their life for God's sake, and you cannot inspire anyone if you're not yourself the example of that. If you're not the example of that, and you will not have the purity to preach that if you're not yourself are the example of that. So there's no question about the purity of Christ. And Prabhupada accepted that, and he never said anything negative about Christ. He had only had a lot of praise for Christ, and also for Christians. He was encouraging them follow Christ. That's another thing, because Prabhupada, with the universal vision of Krishna consciousness, he could see that it's not that necessarily Christians or others, followers of religions, or followers of other religions, they have to become practicing devotees like we do in the Gaudiya tradition of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. You can be God consciousness within other traditions as well, and follow the particular forms and rituals and ceremonies and whatever you are following there. So Prabhupada would always simply instruct Christians, become better Christians. You're a Christian, you are an admirer of Jesus Christ, and you believe in Jesus Christ. This is very good, so please follow him. Please follow him. And Prabhupada would point out two places where actually they should improve. Christ would say, "Thou shalt not kill." Prabhupada would always say that. So, please stop killings. Please stop the slaughterhouses. This is, if you simply, Prabhupada would say, simply stop the slaughterhouses, because Christ said you should not kill, and you're killing on a massive scale. And therefore, you will not have God consciousness. Prabhupada said actually it's a fact. Anyone who is killing animals and is a meat eater will not understand God consciousness. It's simply not possible. And so Prabhupada would, whenever he had conversations with Christians, that was the first point he would get to. And Prabhupada would be confrontational and uncompromising. There's a famous, quite well-known conversation that Prabhupada he had with a French cardinal, Daniel Lou, in Paris, was that in 74? I think it was. And it's a very interesting conversation. It's even videotaped, so you can have a look at it. You can see the two persons. The cardinal, he's quite a corpulent. He looks like someone who doesn't deny the gifts of God, including flesh. He's quite fat. And also he's actually quite nervous. You see he's sweating and like that. Prabhupada sitting there in his chair, completely, dignified, calm, relaxed, but so strongly speaking. And the cardinal is actually a very highly positioned priest, or in the Catholic, in the hierarchy of the Catholic. You have the Pope, and then you have the cardinals, and the Pope is always elected from the new Pope is elected from one of the cardinals. They're just below the Pope. So this French cardinal Daniel, he was a very highly positioned person in the Catholic hierarchy. So Prabhupada, so the devotees had arranged an interview between Prabhupada and this cardinal, and because generally when we are invited to prominent people like that, I sometimes get invited to in some official capacity and speak with some of the some of the top people in for example, the Danish church and like that. But I'm very respectful. I'm not like Prabhupada. Maybe I should be. But Prabhupada, he wasn't like this. We all worship the same God, and we should respect each other, and you respect me, I respect you, and like that. But that's also used, okay, in certain contexts, I believe. But Prabhupada, was not like that with this cardinal. You hear the tape, and this cardinal is being presented, and he starts speaking and said, "Oh, I'm very happy. Thank you, Swamiji. I'm very happy to meet you." And Prabhupada, without any formality, just said, "May I ask you one question?" And then he says, "In the Bible it is said, 'Thou shalt not kill.' So why do you kill?" Immediately, there was no formality. and then the cardinal, he doesn't get the point immediately. And he said, no, there should be no killing and like that. And then Prabhupada goes on, but you're killing animals, and you have, there's slaughterhouses, and you're eating meat, and you're killing, but Christ says, 'Thou shalt not kill.' And Prabhupada was just on his cases. And the cardinal is quite an ignorant person. He's first saying that it only means human beings, 'Thou shalt not kill.' Prabhupada says that's not true. Christ says, he doesn't say, 'Thou shalt not murder.' He says, 'Thou shalt not kill.' It means general. You should not. Why? So why are you killing and eating meat? And then the cardinals will say, but that means you should not eat flesh. And Prabhupada says, no. And it's kind of the idea of cardinal, but then what should you eat? You die. And then Prabhupada has to explain, no, human beings, they can live very, very nicely just with fruits and grains and milk products and like that. No meat. It's not necessarily having meat. And the discussion goes on. Prabhupada is keeping on pushing that. And he says, and at one point the cardinal says, but I don't think this is an essential point. The point is that we should love God and follow His principles. And then Prabhupada is immediately back, and that if you love God, you must follow what He says, and Christ said, you should not kill. So why do you kill? He wouldn't then get off the hook. And finally he winds up and says, it's a fact that those who are killing animals, they cannot understand God. It's not possible. You cannot understand God if you're eating meat and killing animals. So that was his point with Christians. He was insisting, don't give up Christ, but follow Christ actually. Actually follow Christ, don't eat meat. And then you should chant the name of Christ. He said that it's a universal principle in this age of Kali to chant the name of God. Lord Chaitanya said, Nam Nam Akari Bahugyani Jasarva Shakti. That all the potencies of God are found in the names of God, and therefore God has many, many names, millions of names, and such as Krishna and Ram, but also many, many other names, thousands of names. And they're all equally potent, and if you have some kind of a prejudice against chanting Krishna or Ram, well then you can chant the name of God in your language and in your tradition, and it will be the same. Prabhupada said that will be has the same effect. So he's saying you should chant the name of Christ, because Christ, he has. There's a discussion with a German monk. What was his name? Someone remember? Some brother. So, and that was a very nice conversation. This monk, he was actually quite a nice Christian, pious and like that. He also agreed with Prabhupada. This actually they should not kill and eat animals and like that. And then when start to talk about chanting the name of God, and then this monk he pulled out his rosary and he said, I'm also chanting this prayer, which is Lord Jesus Christ, please have mercy on me. In Latin, I believe they were chanting Latin or Greek. Probably this is very nice. This is proper, and all Christians should do that. We should all chant the name of God. And actually, it was a tradition. I mean, because we are we're living in the Protestant part of the world, And Protestant means it comes from the word protest. They were protesting against the Catholic Church and the abuses of the Catholic Church. And they threw out a lot of the corruption from when they established the Protestant Church. But unfortunately, they also threw out everything else that was a problem. There's this expression, you threw out the baby with the bathwater, isn't it? So they threw out actually, the small child Jesus actually also was thrown out with all the bathwater. So in one sense, not complete, but a lot of the good things of the Catholic Church, which must go back to the time of Jesus or somehow just passed on by tradition, were also thrown out. So Protestants, they don't have a rosary, they're not chanting prayers to God systematically like that, but many Catholics do, and Prabhu said that all Christians should do that. They should chant rounds of this prayer to Christ. If they simply do that, stop killing animals, and then they chant the name of God, then they will become very God-conscious persons. And I know that from meeting. I mean, some years ago I was in contact with a Catholic woman, an old elderly Catholic woman, and she was chanting her rosary like 1 or 2 hours every morning, like we chant out every morning. She was also chanting rosary like that. And she was also saying, asking me actually, how you get connected with God through this prayer. So that was in the Prabhupada's advice to Christians. Please also chant the name of Christ, and they also was saying that Christ and Krishna is not just chants, that these words, these names are almost the same or similar. Prabhupada said the word Christ, you can actually trace it back to Krishna. He said that there is, in some parts in northern India, Krishna is pronounced as Krishna, and that somehow or other that name was translated into Greek, became Christos, and there you have Christ, Christos. It comes from somehow or other through that way on to Prabhupada. So actually it is the name of Christ, the name of God, Krishna, that was revealed by Jesus according to Prabhupada in Christ. So you chant Christ, and that's the name of God for you, and that's bona fide. And that will bring you in touch with God. We have all respect for Christ. We don't have respect for the abuses that go on in the name of Christ, and for the false teachings that have been propagated in the name of Christ. But that's not, but the pure teaching, which are actually they're non-different from the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita. We have all respect for that, and therefore we can even though it's not Christmas Eve, it's not like or Christ is not really like a personality that belongs to our sampradaya, our tradition, but we have no problem also commemorating him and offering all praise to Christ, and maybe he would even like that better than the celebrations that are going on, celebrating Christ, for example, in this town here. There's a lot of celebrations going on right now, and in one sense, any kind of religion or just a glimpse of religion is always better than no religion. Even though the way it's been celebrated now, where there's hardly anything left of Christ, is better than nothing. It's actually better than nothing. But still, what goes on is close to nothing. And of course, we know that a lot of the Christmas things that goes on today is a farce. It's a parody of what goes on, and even it has become so much of a parody Christmas that in all the stores they made a rule: Christ cannot be part of that. You see that you go to the Bilkas and the Furtexes and like that. Where is Christ in all the Christmas celebrations? They have the decorations and like that. I mean, they're not there. And even what is more funny is that actually when you're really going to celebrate Christ, which is supposed to be today and tomorrow, actually they stopped celebrating Christmas. If you notice, the big stores on the 23rd, they take down all the Christmas decorations. Anyone notice that? Because we generally are. We spend the last days in Christmas before. I mean, like yesterday, Janard and I, we were all born in Italy, was in Aarhus and like that. We were out there and actually trying to give people a good Christmas by selling Bhagavad Gitas to them, and some were buying them. And even the Bishop of Aalborg yesterday bought a Bhagavad Gita, or the former bishop, I think I told that to so some Christians, they got the Bhagavad Gita with home. So we were there, and we were there until when the shops were closing. And if you see the last thing that happened, the last half hour before all the shops close, is what do? They take down all the Christmas decorations. Just take them down, and then they put up all the New Year stuff. Sales, 50% reduction, something like that, already on the 23rd. Because actually they don't care about Christ. They want to make money, and if Christ is there, that's a disturbance, because all the customers and all the money. Who wants to hear about Christ? That's the last thing we want to hear about. That's a comedy. This is not Christmas. So that we should. I think we should make jokes about that, and we should ridicule that, because it deserves to be ridiculed. But the celebration of Christ, even though it's whatever it is, okay, that is better than nothing. That is better than nothing. And even though there's not much understood of what actually his teachings really were, we have had some discussions on that. And just before Christmas this year, we published this one here. It's in Danish. Many of you have probably seen that, but it's you haven't seen it? Yeah, it's about Christ and Krishna. We put out an old magazine on that with some information on Christ and his actual teachings, and what the teachings were. You go back historically, you look at the early Christians, and you actually find out that what they are teaching, like the church fathers in the 1st and 2nd centuries, like that, before the Bible was compiled. At present, the Bible that the Christians are following is not written by Christ. I mean that, and the first Christians for almost 300 years, they didn't have the Bible. So how could they be Christians like that? But they were doing seemingly very well. They had many written testimonies of the life of Christ and the teachings of Christ, hundreds of texts like that, and somehow they were able to get the essence, or something, and actually quite some deep understandings if you see the writings of some of these early church leaders or church fathers, as they're called. Some of them were very profound in their understanding. And if you look at that early Christianity, actually reincarnation was a part of their teaching. It's very clear. And also they were vegetarians. They were very devoted to God, and they were quite living simple and austere and like that. Only later on, the Bible was compiled by Romans actually, and some was controlled by the Romans, and they selected what they want to put in the holy book out of the many hundreds of texts that the early Christians were reading and finding inspiration from. A few were selected and put into the Bible, and even some of these in the Bible, they were actually forged. It looked like, according to historians. Some historians think that some of the texts actually were actually faked at a later time. for some political reasons. But the early teachings, this is what we write about here, was actually reincarnation was part of it. Vegetarianism was part of it. Chanting the name of God was also part of the early teaching and like that. And living a life without sense gratification, living simply, living devoted to God, living for helping other human beings and making other people, preaching like that. Very, very similar. We wouldn't have much disagreement with that kind of teaching actually. Very, very similar to what was going on. And also, if you look at it more historically, of course it's even more controversial, and whether it's relevant or not relevant, but also there's a lot of evidence that Christ had not only connections to the Vedic traditions and to India and like that, but actually that he was in India and he died in India too. There's a lot of evidence that indicates that Christ, before he had this very active preaching in India, now in Israel, he was in India for quite a period and was trained and became a great spiritual teacher there. And then he went to Palestine when he was preaching. And then he was captured, he was crucified, but he did not die there. And then after being crucified, he again left and he ended up back in India, Kashmir, and like that. There's a lot of evidence like that, and that's of course very fascinating and interesting. I don't know how relevant it is, but it looks like there's good historical evidence that this is actually more really what happens. Which also connects actually that Christ was probably another guru, another teacher connected with one of the Vedic paramparas. But again, how much we need to know about that, or how much we should get into that can be discussed. But it's interesting. In any case, it is definitely Christ is a person who's worth celebrating. Prabhupada would be happy if we can celebrate, honor Christ in the right way, and then also understand what it means to really follow Christ. Christ came as a guru, and he said, and that you find the Christians actually always repeating that there is no one. What did he say? I'm the truth and the light and the way, something like that. Mm-hmm. And no one comes to the Father except through me. Is that how? So, and that's correct, but that's been misunderstood by the Christians. It actually refers to guru. You cannot go to God without going through a guru. So at that time, Christ was a guru in that part of the world. There was no one else who was able to preach the truth and the way and the light. So they could only go through Christ, because you need a living representative. That's always. You have to have someone. We cannot approach God directly, any of us. God is within us as a super soul, and He's speaking to us, but we are not able to hear. We cannot hear the instructions of God from within. Therefore, we need a guru. We need a guru who is able to convey the message of Krishna, of God, to each of us, and then we can understand. So following Christ means actually following the guru. It means following the living representative of God and surrendering unto Him and serving Him. This is actually truly following God. Following someone like Christ, who lived 2,000 years ago without any tradition that has conserved his true message, but just thinking that in your mind you're connected with God, or in your heart like that, it's not going to bring anyone very much in contact with God or God's desires actually. You have to be in connection with someone who's actually living. So we had, for example, we had just within recent times, Prabhupada was here. He has his, and the followers of him are still here. Prabhupada was here. He was preaching also God consciousness on a massive scale. And a message that is non-different from what Christ was teaching, but in a modern context. And in one sense, Prabhupada is more significant than Christ and more, and will have more influence than Christ. I mean, at least in my opinion, if you go down another 1,000 years from now, Prabhupada will have much more influence than Christ had. Why? Because the teachings of Prabhupada are preserved. Prabhupada, by Krishna's arrangement, we have to see, sometimes we think we live in a horrible modern world, and that's true. It's a horrible world with all the, all the machines and industry and economics, and the world is being ruined and like that. And but actually, that's also happening by Krishna's arrangement. We should not think that the great epochs or eras in history arise without being actually architected or designed by God. So also the present age has been designed by God with all the modern machinery like that. It should be seen like that. And thus, due to modern machinery, the teachings of a greatly empowered personality, God conscious, also Shakti's avatar like Prabhupada, has been recorded. Prabhupada wrote books, and they were printed on printing presses, and the books have been preserved. And Prabhupada was giving lectures, and they were recorded on tape recorders. So today we have a massive heritage of Prabhupada's teachings which have been recorded. We can hear Prabhupada's voice. Just turn on the MP3 player, and we have several thousands of lectures on Prabhupada and conversations and so on. Plus the 50 books that he wrote, they're all there, they're still preserved. We don't have any direct writing from Christ at all. Nothing has been left from Christ. But Prabhupada is, his teachings are there. His own personal writing we have. And that means this will last for posterity. And us who are following Prabhupada are trying to implement his teachings. We're not pure, and many of us will deviate in some ways. But anyone can always go back to Prabhupada's original writings, and again come back to the pure, the really pure teaching. And therefore, Prabhupada's actual significance for those who want not just to follow religion just by some cultural thing or traditional thing like that, but actually want really to develop God consciousness. Prabhupada's importance is much greater than any other of the previous teachers in the recorded history of mankind, actually. It's the first time in the history of mankind that you have a teacher on the level of Prabhupada and Christ and Muhammad and even Chaitanya and even Krishna and so on, whose teachings have been completely preserved to the extent that Prabhupada has. We tend to think that because he's so close to us in time, and therefore we take a little more granted like that. But as centuries will go on, and everyone will see Prabhupada's significance will just become more and more prominent, because his teachings were preserved the way they were and are. So that also means, so true Christian, he will become a good devotee of Prabhupada. That's real worship.